Yeehaw! This week we're going to Nashville. Hey everyone, this week we're talking about Nashville Notation, and I'm going to show you a sort of hybrid version of it. This is something that all improvising musicians should understand and be familiar with. Now, many of you have been to a gig and you've seen musicians on the set break or at a jam session quickly scribbling something down on a cocktail napkin and then passing it around on stage. Well, what they're doing here is writing out the chords to the song in a type of shorthand, so that even though all the members of the group don't know the song, they can still go ahead and perform it. And this shorthand is commonly known as Nashville Notation. So I'm going to explain what it is, how it works, and why any musician who's serious about learning jazz, or any other popular style of music for that matter, needs to apply this system to their learning and their practice. According to Wikipedia, Nashville Notation was developed sometime in the 1950s as a shorthand so that musicians could quickly learn chord progressions in the recording studio, and so that they could try songs in different keys without needing a whole new written out score or arrangement. And what's particularly brilliant about this system is that you don't need to read music in order to use it. So it lends itself perfectly to all the popular styles of music where historically musicians weren't classically trained in sight reading. But Nashville Notation isn't anything new. In fact, similar types of shorthand were used going back hundreds of years, all the way back to Johann Sebastian Bach and the Baroque period. And this type of shorthand is how virtually every jazz musician thinks about and organizes harmony. And I'm convinced that all the great composers did too, whether we're talking about Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, whoever. Because unlike the typical harmonic analysis that's taught in the music conservatories, this type of system is the logical way to actually apply harmony. I'm always talking about the importance of thinking about music and harmony numerically, and I've done several videos on the topic. I did one about scale degrees, one about practicing the phone book, the 5 ways to 1. I talk about this in the video I did about the jazz standard that we should all be learning in 12 keys. And most recently I talked about it when I explained my approach to learning jazz standards the first and last time and retaining these songs over the long haul. And the reason why it's so important to think about music this way is that you'll no longer be tethered to sheet music. All of a sudden you'll be able to play songs in multiple keys, and it makes memorizing and retaining music simple and effortless. And if we're talking about tonal music, which is about 99% of all music, I figure, you'll soon find that there are only a finite number of places that the chords and harmony can go in music. And so if we get in the practice of analyzing all the songs we're learning with this type of numerical organization, it demystifies music. It opens up so many doors for us as improvisers, or if you're interested in composition, arranging, songwriting, whatever it is, this is essential. With Nashville Notation, every chord is assigned a number determined by its position in the scale. So if we're talking about the key of C major, for example, well then a C chord is assigned number 1, D, 2, E, 3. And then any chords that fall outside of the scale, like E flat minor, for example, well, we'd call that flat 3. It's very simple, it makes perfect sense. And what I like to use is a type of hybrid mixing in some traditional harmonic analysis. Because when it comes to jazz music, jazz standards, obviously these songs go to more interesting harmonic places than your average pop song. So not only am I using it as a notation system, but also as a way of analyzing the songs I'm playing and understanding where they go, how they work, and also hopefully identifying common chord sequences like 2-5-1s, for example. This is how it works. I use Roman numerals, and so any chord that's built off of a major third, we're talking major triad, a major 6th or 7th chord, dominant 7th chord, augmented chord, anything like that is assigned an uppercase Roman numeral. Then anything built off of a minor third, so a minor triad, a minor 7th chord, a diminished chord, a half diminished chord, that's assigned a lowercase Roman numeral. And then depending on the type of chord, you would put the usual chord symbol next to it, a minor 7 or a 7 flat 9, the type of symbols you would see in a lead sheet or in the real book. And don't worry, I intend to do a video about understanding chord changes, so please stay tuned. But for today's purpose, I'm going to demonstrate this using the blues because it's a song form that I'm sure most of us are familiar with. So we'll start with a simple 3-chord blues, and then we'll build on that using a little more harmonic complexity. Starting with the 3-chord blues in the key of C. So for 4 bars, we have C7. That's the 1 chord, so we get an uppercase Roman numeral 1 with a 7 next to it because it's a dominant chord. In the 5th measure, we go to F7, which is the 4 chord, so we assign an uppercase 4 with the 7 next to it. We go back to 1 for 2 measures, and then in the 9th measure, we have G7. That's the 5 chord, so an uppercase Roman numeral 5 with the 7 next to it, going to 4, F7, back to 1. It's very, very simple. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. Now let's look at a more typical jazz blues where we have a little 2-5-1 in it. So we start on the 1 chord, 1-7. In the 2nd measure, we go to the 4 chord, so 4-7, back to 1. 5th measure, no surprise, we go back to F7, so we put a 4 with a 7 next to it. Then we go back to 1. This time we'll make it 1 major. So instead of having a 7 next to it, I put a triangle. You could put MAJ, however you like to name your chords. Then we go to A7, which is the 6th. So we get the 6 Roman numeral with the 7 by it. And then we have a 2-5-1. So 2 lowercase Roman numeral with a minor 7 symbol next to it. G7, 5-7, back to C7, which is 1. Now I'm going to add just a little bit more harmony to this blues so I can demonstrate what I mean about a hybrid system of Nashville notation. So here we have C7 going to F7 back to 1, and then we have G minor 7, C7 going to F7. In typical Nashville notation, well, G minor, that would be assigned a 5 because G is the 5th in relation to C, and then the C7 would be 1 going to the 4 chord. But I don't like to do that because I like to identify the actual function and understand how the harmony is working, where it's going. So I'll go 1-7, 4-7, 1-7, and then I'll put the next measure in brackets, and I'll put 2 minor 7, 5-7 of 4, because we have 2-5-1 in the key of 4, G minor 7, C7 to F, and I think that makes a lot more sense and is much more practical. After that, we go back to the 1, we'll say 1 major, then I'll call E minor A7, 3 minor 7, 6-7, 2 minor, 5-7-1. We have a 3-6-2-5-1 at the end, a very common chord progression. Now let's analyze a bird blues, which has a lot more harmony going on in it. So a bird blues starts on the key of 1 major. So we have C major, 1 major. And then we have B minor 7 flat 5, E7, going to A minor 7, D7, G minor 7, C7. So there's a whole heck of a lot of chord movement. In typical Nashville notation, we'd have 1, and then the B minor 7 flat 5 chord, that would be 7, E7 would be 3, etc. What I like to do, we start on 1, and then B minor 7, E7 is a 2-5 to A minor, which is the relative minor of C major. So I would write it starting out by 1 major 7, and then in brackets, I'd put 2 minor 7 flat 5, 5 of the relative minor. And then when we get to the A minor 7 chord, that acts as sort of a harmonic pivot. Remember, we're going to F major. So A minor 7 in the key of F is 3, D7 is 6, G minor 7 is 2, 5-7 is 5. So there I'd put it in brackets, 3-6-2-5 of the 4 chord of F major. I hope that makes sense. Remember, this is YouTube, so you can always pause it, take a look at it again more slowly if it's not making sense the first time around. After the 4 chord, we have a whole string of 2-5-1s that descend by semitone until we get all the way back to home base, to C major. So there's a few ways we could think about this. But I start by thinking 4 minor 7, flat 7 dominant. Then we have E minor 7, A7. That's your typical 3-6. But then in the next measure, we have E flat minor 7, A flat 7. So you could think of this as flat 3 minor 7, flat 6 dominant 7. Or you could think about it as 2-5 of the flat 2 key center. However you want, it's fine. And then finally we have 2, 5, 1, and then a turnaround 1-6-2-5. And so that's how I would analyze a bird blues. And it makes a lot of sense that way. Not long ago, I did a video where I talked about learning to play bird blues in all 12 keys, and I demonstrated it. And then I started hearing back from some viewers like, how is it possible? How do you remember all those chords? And the thing is, I don't remember all those chords. I think about it in this way that I'm showing you now. And if you think about it this way, then it's very easy to start playing these songs through all 12 keys. It's as simple as that. This is how virtually every jazz musician learns the chords to songs. And you can do this with any song, whether it's All the Things You Are, Stella by Starlight, a Michael Jackson song, a Beatles song, rhythm changes, whatever, it doesn't matter. And not only does it allow us to play the songs more easily in all the keys, but it lets you learn the logic and the function behind harmony. And then you don't have to clutter your brain anymore with each and every chord symbol, right? Like a tune like Autumn Leaves, you don't have to think C minor 7, F7, B flat major, E flat major, A minor 7 flat 5, D7, G minor 7, and then what? I got to put it into another key? It just becomes really easy. 2, 5, 1, 4, 2, 5 to the relative minor. That's it. I know that in the beginning, or for any beginners who are watching this video, this might seem really complicated and overwhelming. I don't want you to feel that way. I hope I've explained it at least well enough so you can see why this is such a practical approach. It's not going to happen overnight, but remember, it's YouTube, so if there's something that's kind of confusing, you can always pause it and go back until you wrap your head around it. The important thing is that we start to think about music this way. Every time you start learning a new song, try to do an analysis of it numerically. And over time, it will become second nature. I assure you, it will become fast, and you will thank me for it later. I'm the Saxophone Oracle. This week, we're talking about Nashville notation and harmonic analysis. I truly hope you found this week's video useful and that you start putting this into practice. As always, thank you so much for continuing to watch. If you haven't already done so, please click the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends. All these little things make it so my videos are easier for others to find on YouTube. I would really appreciate it. I wish you a great week. Happy practicing. See you next Tuesday.